Hey folks, Plastic Eric here, Plastic Soundwave here for the first Tuesday collection connection. The game is just an excuse to talk about music. It's a game I play with my brother Bryce, and the way we're going to play it now is one Tuesday I do a connection, and the following Tuesday he does a connection, so on and so forth. And so I pick something from my collection that I talk about, and then Bryce finds a connection to it, and from his collection, talks about an album that he connected to the one that I talked about, and then I do it. And then we were doing it every Monday and Thursday, but we switched to this schedule, as we've said in our previous videos, that this works out a little bit better for our schedules. So the last album that Bryce talked about on his last Thursday show was the Cardigans and how they related. Every time, as soon as I start, the dog starts barking. But back to what I was saying. So between Bongzilla, Stash, and the Cardigans, Life, the connection was that both of those albums have Black Sabbath covers on them. And the person who guessed that correctly, which is what I forgot to mention before, you guessed the connection. The person who guessed the connection was Murdock from Murdock's Music Minute. Check his link down in the description. Check out his channel. He just recently put out a video. I have not seen it yet. It looks interesting. I find all of his videos interesting. Yeah, it's a crime that more people aren't watching what he shows. It's really good. So I ended up checking out the Cardigans Life. And I think that Love Fool was not on this album, or might have been on this album. I'm not quite sure. I'm getting a little bit mixed up. When I look at the track listing of this album on Discogs, it's got several different kinds. And then when I went on Spotify, it was almost completely different from that there too. And so I had to look extra for the Black Sabbath cover because it wasn't on Spotify, or at least not when I listened to it. I had to look it up on YouTube. And so, what did I think of the Cardigans? They're okay. I don't know how to describe it, but it seems like it's basically kind of music that's on the surface, very stylistic. I tend to like things that fill up the air a little bit more than this stuff does. I like a lot of bass and a lot of stuff like that. It seems kind of dancey, but at the same time, it doesn't have the heavy bass in it like I'm kind of used to. And I know there's bass in it, but I don't know. It's not that I don't like it, but it's not as up my alley as some of the other stuff that Bryce has shown recently. And yeah, for the most part, I thought it was all right. It wasn't that I hated it when I listened to it. It just, in my mind, I have like a square. When I listen to music, I like to fill that square with the visuals, kind of like those visualizers that you see on Apple Music or, Microsoft Media Music. And you get those visualizers. Those are okay. I like those because I have something similar in my own brain. And the Cardigans have a lot of empty spots, it feels like, in their songs. I don't know how to describe it. I like pop as much as Bryce does, but they don't quite hit all cylinders for me on it. Again, it's not that I didn't like it, but it's not that I truly liked it either. And so that's probably one that I've got Love Fool on, I think it's the Romeo and Juliet soundtrack. And so that's pretty much enough for me. I thought Carnival was a good song. I do find that their version of Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath to be pretty interesting. But overall, it was kind of confusing. I think I saw at least 2 or 3 different track listings for that album. And then, like, yeah, the Spotify one was almost different from those as well. So just looking around, I think this album probably could have been better received by people, by the general public, had they focused more on just putting out a solid album instead of like this. They're constantly mishmashed, changed around. I mean, I know that's been a tradition between artists in Europe, and then, when they come to a label in America, they tend to switch things up, and we have different track listings and whatnot. But overall, I think the track listing I heard was trying too hard to kind of win everybody over. I don't know if that makes sense. Again, didn't hate it, didn't love it. So overall, it was an interesting listen. But I'm sure that Bryce is not going to be singing that same tune when I show you what my connection is. All right, so the album that I want to talk about today that I connected to the Cardigans' life is Helmet. Their second album. This is Meantime, which it says right here. At the time, this was a pretty cool little CD to get. Music was changing quite a bit. Grunge had already kind of kicked in. And this sort of got lumped in with that, but I always thought of it more as like nu metal, which I'm sure most people thought of it as nu metal. And from these guys here, they kind of led to like Godsmack and maybe like Stained a little bit, where they were definitely much more commercial angst than what was coming out before then. This kind of music was more underground, and this was kind of that first album that really got that nu metal stuff out there. Interesting thing about this album is the one I'm holding here is the one that my wife brought into the collection when we got married. And I was surprised when I saw it, because it goes in a little bit of the things I'm going to talk about on my other Tuesday. The fact that there's two different versions of the album cover. And this was the one that I had for years, and so I was surprised when I saw it in blue, but mine was in red. And I got this one early on from when the song Unsung came out. I picked this up right away. I love how it starts out. I think it's a little bit ironic today that I've got a red and blue thing, being that this is the 5th of November, 2024. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, I don't know which one to put at the end of this whole thing. But I'll pick one. And so maybe you could vote on it. But these albums here, or this album, it's interesting to me how the fact that the CDs are the same on both of them. And I don't know how much of because I think this part over here on the red one is blue. So I think most of the changes occurred with this in the booklet that goes in with the CD, but the CD case, because again, we've got the Meantime, this switched around, but the back for both of these exactly the same. I think same thing with and so the back card and the CD is the same in all of them, but there was a mix of going between the red and the blue. And I guess where I bought mine, maybe it's because it was at Warehouse Records and she bought hers at Sam Goody. We ended up with two different copies, on the surface, I guess. It's obviously the same music. Not all the tracks are changed on it, like what we were talking about with the Cardigans earlier. But overall, I do like the heavy guitar, and it's not just like heavy guitar, but it's a little bit more upbeat. So a lot of the stuff that I have with heavy guitars in it, like Electric Wizard and Spelljammer and those kind of bands, they tend to be a little bit more down-tempoed. And this is kind of that music, but just up-tempoed a little bit. And so I found it pretty good at the time. It's not music that I listen to a lot. It's one of those albums that I'm guaranteed I'm only going to listen to it about once a year. One of the things I do is the way I go through my collection is I go through alphabetically. I start at A, go all the way through. And that way, at least if it's going to take up space in my house, I'll be able to at least listen to it at least once. And I'm still in that stage where basically if an album is in my collection, I can hear it all within a year, because I'm more of an album guy. Bryce is more of a song guy. And so maybe that's why my collection is a little bit smaller. I try not to get it too much where it's really one song that I like on an album and then the rest of the album is kind of crap. I like to get solid albums that I enjoy listening to across the span of the whole record. And, besides the opening song, Meantime, and the title track, which really kicks ass. I mean, it just starts off. I mean, classic 90s nu metal has such a strong opening. One of the stronger openings out there. But between that song and Unsung, those are the only two songs that I could name on this album. And it kind of falls a little bit under where I'm at with the Cardigans. It's okay. Well, I guess this is a little bit better than the Cardigans in the sense of it's okay. It's not blowing my mind necessarily. I do enjoy listening to it when I do, but it's not one that I pull out and just go, I feel like listening to some Helmet today. But overall, the album is pretty good. I went ahead and listened to it again, and just to familiarize myself with the songs. And even doing that, listening to it twice, I can really only tell you those two songs. And so maybe that's why it's a little bit of a weaker album for me in my collection, is the fact that really it's those two songs that I really like. The other ones sound like a mix of those two songs, and maybe that's why I can't remember. Again, I'm way over 50 at this point, and it could be just I have a shitty memory. Because there's other bands that I really like the whole album, and I can't remember the shit from those songs either. What the names are, what albums they're on. I'm losing it a little bit. Getting older. That's just how it is. So that's why I try to listen to the album. If I get a new one, I try to listen to it 3 or 4 times. But now I'm drifting off a little bit. I'm wasting a bit more of your time. This is already, you can tell, it's going to be a longer video. So with that, do you think you could figure out